Well, federal Liberals are gathering in Nanaimo, BC today to plot strategy for the coming election year. Some MPs who don't feel comfortable speaking publicly say that they're hoping to hear more from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau this week about how he plans to win back Canadians. The party is still stinging from a devastating by-election loss in Toronto earlier this summer, and the NDP's withdrawal from its confidence and supply agreement. That means any confidence vote could topple the government and trigger an election. Right now, we're joined live by Scott Reid, CTV's political commentator. Scott, I have to start off by asking this. This retreat is probably going to be a little bit melancholy, somber, huh?
Well, it's definitely not going to be jubilant. Look, it's not been a summer that's handed the Liberals a lot to cheer about. I mean, it began with the by-election loss here in Toronto and St. Paul's. Obviously, as you just mentioned, the NDP, their parliamentary partner that shielded them from the threat of an election, that has disintegrated. Their campaign director made national news last week, and the news that he's going to be stepping aside. And, they continue to be extraordinarily low in the polls. They're at 21%, according to Angus Reid last week. And that is a basement-dwelling number that the Liberal Party is simply not used to. 21% is an NDP number. And so, yeah, I think just as you said in the introduction, the critical thing, even his own MPs, are going to be looking to the Prime Minister and saying, well, what's the path to victory? Like, how on earth are we going to scramble off the canvas, get our gloves back up, much less find a way to throw a knockout?
Hey, Scott, let's talk about the role of Trudeau during this retreat. How does that change given everything you just mentioned?
Not much in comparison to traditional caucus retreats, in the sense that he's still going to be at the front of the room. He's the man that everyone looks to. Caucus may have a sense of resignation about their political fate. They do not have a sense of resistance. They are not trying to defy Trudeau. You will not see 30 or 40 of them gathering together, signing an open letter, trying to push the Prime Minister at the door. That might have occurred, at previous times with different governments and different caucuses. That is not happening here. And so they are choosing to hang together. But there's no question they will continue to look to the Prime Minister and say, like, if you can't persuade me, an elected Liberal member of Parliament, that we can compete and win the next election, how do we turn around and persuade our constituents? So that's the number one thing they're going to be asking and looking to him for.
Okay, peripheral goals.
Lots of peripheral goals. One is to just get through the next couple of days. And I mean that literally, because we know with all this trouble, there's going to be a sea of negative questions posed to the Prime Minister and his team. That's why I think we've got Mark Carney showing up. Focus the discussions around the economy. Get back to bread and butter, kitchen table issues. Carney, with his background as governor of the Bank of Canada and the governor of the Bank of England, provide them with that opportunity. It also settles a little bit of a political distraction because, people have wondered, is Carney coming back into cabinet? Is he not coming back into cabinet? This allows Carney to say, see, I'm being loyal to the Liberal Party, even if I'm not joining the cabinet. And it allows Trudeau to say, see, I'm not stubbing Mark Carney. I'm putting him in the harness. Got him working for us. But most of all, it gives them a day of talking about the economy, which is a lot better than talking about, are we going to go down to a certain defeat in the next election?
What do you think should be a part of some of the conversations had during this retreat?
Well, I really do think they need to have the hard knuckle conversation about what's it going to take to get back into a competitive position. So if I was a caucus member, I'd be turning to the Prime Minister and his team and saying, why are we not dedicating millions of dollars to advertising? Why are we letting Pierre Poilievre advertise to Canadians and say that he's a lovely father and a high five kind of guy? And why aren't we putting the boots to him? So I would be asking that kind of question. I'd be asking about how are we going to navigate the fall? And now that we're vulnerable in Parliament to the threat of a snap election, how are we going to navigate confidence votes? Are we going to, as an example, make sure there's no confidence votes around the fall economic statement, take out any measures that might be financial and therefore trigger a confidence vote? How are we going to conduct ourselves between now to Christmas? Because one thing's for certain, every single member of Parliament elected as a Liberal knows that if there's an election in the near term, that their goose is probably cooked.
Okay, so right there, that last part, can I get you to elaborate more on that being probably cooked?
Well, they lost Toronto-St. Paul's, which is one of the safest ridings in the country. They may lose LaSalle-Mar, which is the home riding of former Prime Minister Paul Martin, my old boss, and was regarded as a relatively safe riding. That happens next week. Maybe they'll hang on. And they're at 21% in the polls, which means that there are only a handful of ridings, and I'm talking like 15, that you could safely say, don't worry, you don't even need to show up to knock doors. Liberals will win. Beyond that, it's a Yahtzee. And those Liberal MPs know that their jobs and their futures are on the line.
Yahtzee, and not in the great way. CTV political commentator Scott Reid, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Picard.